Okay, no time to lose, let's get cracking. In this episode we're gonna create the leaves, and the island of the rum is already inside. So if you're still with me, then you are a tough pirate. Okay, so let's move to our point of interest. Here we have those red boxes,
and you know what that means, rum.
That means that it's 3D assets. We need the leaves, the ground mat objects, and the camera, of course. I navigate back to the loaders, and I pick the camera, the leaves, and the leaves animated. Copy them and move back to the boxes. Paste as instance. And let's place them into the right boxes. Now this is the camera. The leaf scatter we put onto the right, and the leaf onto the left. Next, the ground mat objects. This includes the ground, the stones, and the skull. Again, back to our loaders. Select the ground, the skull, and the stones. Copy, and again,
back to the boxes.
Yeah, exactly. Paste in as an instance. Then put the skull on the left, the stones in the center, and the ground on the right. Next, we're gonna merge everything together. Drop in a merge 3D. Here we put together the camera and the leaf animated. Then create or copy 2 more merge 3Ds. Now I want to combine all objects that will be used as mats. Those 3 here. Then bring them together with the leaves. By the way, I am at frame 250 now, and you should be having something like this, hopefully.
Yeah, it looks the same here. Yeah, bloody sucker punch. It looks different.
Mamma mia, you can't do anything right.
Let's see what we have down here. Now this is our render area for the leaves. With the leaf shadow renderer. Next to it is the leaf specular, and next to that the leaf diffuse. And then here you see another one called diffuse. Now this is one for the backside of the leaf. Just to have the possibility to modify the backside. Now it's confusing, so let's rename this to leaf backside. Then above the renderer you can see the ripples leaf. Here we use the same ripples we used for the ground, remember? We gonna put them onto the leaves to give the impression that the rain is hitting the leaves. Then the leaves texture, and the gray boxes are for the shaders. Great so far. Let's start with the leaf shadow. Now this is going to take most of our time today. There are a few ways how we can create shadows in Fusion. Obviously one is by using the shadow option of the light itself, but this sometimes can be tricky. In Fusion, the shadow casting spotlight uses a shadow map. It means if you have large scenes, you need to increase the resolution very high, of course at the cost of performance. Another problem is to get exact contact shadows. Now it really also depends on the scale and the distance of your object or scene. So for example, there are cases when the spotlight is too close to an object and therefore the light won't cast shadows at all. We could fiddle around with that, but I want to show you another method. You can use this method so many times, it's really helpful to know. This is like a magic weapon. Now this method fakes shadows, but in a very cool way.
Is it just me or is this Taurus ugly?
The way we do that is by placing a camera from the top and rendering the leaves with that camera. Then we use that output to project it onto our ground using a...
I know, a projection camera! Shut up, you son of a potato!
Okay, but enough talking. Let's get a copy of a renderer. The settings should be fine. Then paste it into the box. And hook it into the leaf scene. View it. And now we get a white scene here, but it's what we need because we want to put the shadows only on top of this. So we just need the shadows, which we're gonna multiply. Therefore it's fine if everything is white. Now let's get them shadows already, will ya? Let's move over to the dark gray box, leaf shadow projection. So here add a replace material and connect the leaves animated to it. Not the other leaves, let me show you.
No, there.
Damn leaves, I'd rather smoke them.
Now you can create a router here and then a merged 3D. Here I drop in a camera. This is the camera I want to set up facing top down. So select the camera and swing over to the Transform tab. Now copy those settings to get the exact same camera. But you might have to adjust this a little bit, might not be 100% the same as I have here. So now you should have your camera aligned facing downwards like this. And let's get a copy of this renderer and view it. These are the leaves as seen from the top. I changed the color to black. Bang! Yeah. Once you have your shadow plate, you will need the exact same camera, which we will use as the projection camera. So copy and paste it. This time, no instance. Careful. Now I want you to select this camera and check out the control panel. You can see that at the moment, we have only the Control and Transform tab. Now hook in the top-down rendering into the camera, and you will see additional tabs will appear.
It's like opening a treasure box.
Rename this camera to Projection Camera. Then add a Merge 3D before this renderer here. View the merge for a moment. And you would expect to see the shadow projection already, but you don't.
Why?
Well, let's go back to our camera and see what we need to change. When you hook an image into the camera, Fusion automatically creates an image plane at the end of the camera. Now this is useful when working with live action plates or tracking, but now we don't do that, so let's turn it off. Swing over to the Projection tab, enable Camera Projection. Everything turns black. No panic, pirate. Set the projection mode to texture. Still nothing. When you work with projections in texture mode, you will also need one more tool, the catcher. The catcher will catch the projection and apply it as a texture. Hence, you will need the replace material to apply that texture to your object. If you leave the project mode to ambient or light, it will be just like a light source. And of course, then you won't need the catcher. But usually you should be using the texture mode. Go ahead and try the differences. So now we replace the material for the ground with the catcher.
Hey, what? The catcher's in town?
That is bad news.
No, he's gonna catch my chicken again!
And then hook it into this Merge 3D and bang! The leaf shadows appeared but are totally out of place. Now let's go back to the projection camera.
Four. Oh, you removed the 4. 94187.
Swing over to the Transform tab and let me recheck my values. I think I screwed something up here. Yes, the Y offset is wrong, so I will change it to 1.3995 and bang! Here are our fake shadows. If we render this out now, we get this. Now this is a little dangerous because if we would use this as it is now, we will end up getting some edge issues here or outlines. But actually we don't need the leaves matte object here because since this is a shadow, we're just gonna place it behind the leaves anyway. So we can easily make the leaves invisible by using exactly an override 3D, you know. Check Do Visible and uncheck Visible. Bang! Shadows isolated. All we need now is the skull. So the skull should exclude those shadows. Drop in another override after the merge.
Hey, yo, pirate! Why are you always dropping things?
And check matte is matte.
Sounds Turkish.
Now, it seems nothing has changed. Make sure that when you work with matte objects, you check Show Matte Objects here, In my case, it's activated. So the reason in my case is something else. Why don't we check the override over here? And remember, we used this to make objects invisible. So this will override everything we did in the override upstream. We need to tell this override to not affect certain objects, and we do so by using the IDs under exclusion. Important, do not confuse those two overrides here. This one makes the matte objects. This one makes the objects invisible. Okay, so with this override here, check limit by object ID. And now you need to choose an ID that has not been used previously in order to avoid some accidents. So I do 888 now, it's my lucky number. And so now all objects come back because none of them has the ID 888. All we have to do now is to go back to our loader section and change the ID of the leaves, because we want the leaves to be affected by the override, right?
Yeah, that makes perfect sense.
Now you can either change it directly in the loader node, or if you want to keep the original values, well, you can set a preset up in the loader, or you can use an override again. And in the object ID dropdown, assign the ID 888. Now sometimes the ID gets cancelled out. I don't know which node causes that. If it happens to you, try putting that override 3D with the ID setting somewhere else. For example, after the bender works fine for me here. Now that we are here, I want to exclude the stones as well, so I simply copy the override and append it to the stones. Now let's go back and render. Done. Next, the leaf specular. I don't know why I didn't start with the diffuse pass, to be honest, but doesn't really matter. Anyway, so for the specular pass, copy the renderer over, then replace material, and here we're gonna hook in our material, and let's see from where do we branch out. Yep, we can use this merge here, as it shows only the leaves. Now let's get cocky. Let's create the leaf material. Add a reflect material and a thong. Not a thong, a thong.
I do not have these immature thoughts, my friend.
Over here, another thong. And now let's get our maps. Now this blue box says ripples leaf. Remember our pinkish boxes? Yeah. Let's move back over there. Yep, grab our ripples out and move back. Right there. Not so far. Paste in an instance, view it, and I want to make this a normal map. So drop in a create bump, view it, 90, and perhaps the filter size to 5. This will make the result look a little thicker. And yeah, next map. So here we need the HDR out. Let's find it. There. So you know what? Let's copy this HDR and all of the leaf maps at once and go back. Drop it in here. Leaf color, leaf spec, leaf normal, and the HDRI. And what do we need for the HDRI?
I know. Shut up, you.
Yes, the sphere map. So drop it in already. Hook it in, and for the normal, actually let's swap this so we have it right next to the HDRI. Now we need to combine the normal map with our ripples. For that, bring in a merge. View it, and you see we have a resolution mismatch. Now that don't matter, you will see why in a moment. So normal maps are combined using the overlay mode. Let's take a look. The ripples are way too tiny, don't you think so? We will adjust that in a moment. First, I think it's time to view the texture on the leaf object to make final decisions here. So drop in a bump node, set it to bump map and hook it into the Funk's bump slot. Same for the reflect material. Now interesting here is that here it says bump map material, while here it says bump map texture. Mysterious. I'm sure it's some technical thing. We will never know. Okay, the sphere map belongs into the reflect color material slot. This Fong, we hook it into the reflect material. And now you wonder again, why do I hook the material into a material? You might have forgotten. No worries, I'll explain it one more time. The reflect material only gives you reflect properties. It has no shading properties. For that, we use the Fong material. You can also use blend, which passes on its shading properties, such as the diffuse color, for example. Now, another thing that you wonder is why I'm using the bump map for both materials. Well, the bump information is not passed on to the reflect material. So if you don't use the bump inside the reflect material, it will look like you have a clear code over a bumpy surface. So yeah, cool stuff you can create there. Try it out. Okay, let's hook the material into our replace material, view it, and I switch to a perspective view. And let's see how it looks. Yeah, ripples are tiny. Let's make them bigger. So go back to the ripples node, put it into the right viewer and add a transform node. View the transform, and now we can upscale the ripples. I make a copy because I want to increase the amount of ripples as well. You can copy my values or simply do it by eye. In this case, it doesn't really matter. So we bring these brothers back together using a merge, and now we got our big ripples. Of course, not suited for close-ups, but just enough for our scene. You could blur this though. So there are so many little options you can tweak that can affect your result quite a bit. For example, this blur is by default set to Gaussian, and if I switch this to box, for example, some people don't really ever touch these options. So, but you can see that those little pixel artifacts get blurred away a little more or quite a bit. And these kind of settings are totally project dependent though. What works in one project might not work in another. So try it out. Now, although I named this specular pass, it's actually a reflection pass, so no lights needed here. So I think I want to tweak the leaf material a bit. I go back and change the reflect material. I set the glazing strength to 0.085. I have not talked about it yet, as I assumed everybody knows what this does. It is actually what the fall-off map does in other applications like 3ds Max, for example. The glazing strength controls the reflections showing more on the sides, while phasing controls reflections, facing to the camera. And I set the fall-off to 3.08, and this sets the area between the glazing and the phasing angle. Then I go to the Fong material and change the color to black, so that we get only reflections, no diffuse. Okay, now these reflections look a little bit dodgy, but yeah, let's bring this further. So select the sphere map and in the X rotation set it to 107.27 and the Y to 58.18. That looks better. Now I would check another frame, maybe 182. And yeah, great. Next pass, I would say. So let's take care of the diffuse pass. This one is rather simple. I just get a renderer over. Take the color map. Hook it into a Fong material. and hook that one into a replace material. Always the same, nothing new here. Yeah, you know all this by now. The replace goes into the renderer, view it, and here you get your diffuse pass. Now I will tweak the colors a bit. For that you can use the color of the thong material, which kind of tints your texture. Or you can do your color corrections after the renderer. You could also use a color corrector on the texture itself, so you do as you please, it's really up to you. Now, since we have an alpha here, we would usually have to alpha divide before doing the color correction. Another way to do that is right inside the color corrector. Under the option tab, you can find the check pre-divide post-multiply checkbox. Okay, so let's move back to our little leaf. The last pass we create is for having the backside for the leaf. This is also very simple. We need a renderer, a replace material, and then from this router go into the replace material. Now we get an exact copy of the diffuse pass. Actually, let's get the leaves only. You can't read the notes now because I'm too far zoomed out, but if you have the same layout, it should be clear. So these are the leaves only. Branch out and hook into the router here. Okay, now comes the trick. To get the backside only, use an override. Yes, again, it's always the same. And check do cul front face and cul front face. This will isolate the back faces, which we can use as a mask. Now we are ready to composite the leaves, and that will happen down here. We need our passes, of course. The boxes are named accordingly: diffuse, specular or reflections, and the backside, and the shadow out. So let's grab them. Copy and then paste in an instance. And put them into the corresponding boxes.
Remember, I'm the sheriff around here. Step out of line and I'll... What's your poison? I could really use a breath mint. You're telling me, take a whole roll.
Okay, let's start. First, we need to alpha divide. We could do this here right after the renderer. Now, in this case, since it is a rather simple compositing test, we can use the alpha divide node. Now, copy it over and... oh, actually, this is the shadow. Yeah, here we don't need it. Then the diffuse and the backside. Now let's see how this works. You see the footage is divided. We bring this together using a Boolean tool. Now set the Boolean tool to add, and very important, the alpha to do nothing. We do not want to add something to the alpha, so make sure it's set to do nothing. Now the backside we're going to use as a mask. So I drop in a color corrector and a mask to have more control. And now we can tune this down. Now don't worry about those lines. I know it looks very scary and strange, but this will go back to normal once we do the alpha multiply. So let's set the color correction to something like this.
Grog, anyways? Grog, the secret mixture that contains the more of the following: kerosene, propylene, lysol, artificial sweetness, sulfuric acid, rum, acetone, battery acid, red dye 2, scum, axle grease, and more pepperoni. Blimey! I'll take a caffeine-free grog.
Another thing we can do with the back face mask is to cut out the specularity at the bottom. I drop in another mask, hook in the backside, and this mask into the channel boolean. This will completely mask out the bottom part. Now if you don't want to cut out all of it, you can in between a brightness contrast here I notice the mask should be set to red because with the alpha divide node only RGB channels gets divided by the alpha. The alpha won't be divided as you see here. So choosing alpha in here will make the masks actually stay anti-aliased. But I want the mask also to be divided, so I choose red, and I will choose red in both masks to show you something in a moment. I know it gets a little confusing now, but bear with me. So back to the brightness contrast. Now changing the brightness allows you to bring back the specularity on the bottom of the leaf. Now if you look closely, because we divided the mask and the backside, we will get this problem here. Now it wasn't a good idea to divide the mask of the backside because it is overlapping with the leaf. It means if we divide it, we lose the anti-aliasing, and in that area an alpha multiply will have no effect later on, so it will stay unanti-aliased. So I will change the mask back to alpha with this one as well. But now I will have to check the alpha in the brightness contrast to get the same result. I know this is a little hard to grasp, but don't worry, you will eventually get it. Now let's merge it with the shadows. Add a merge, hook both in, the shadows in the background of course, and the leaves in the foreground. And of course before we merge we need the alpha multiply. And this seems to be okay. To double check, you can select the alpha divide and the alpha multiply, toggle on and off, and if nothing changes, it's probably correct. Now I tweak the color here a little bit, make it a little bit more bluish and darker. Okay, great. We are ready to hook this into our output node. So copy the leaf out. I check the alpha. Now the shadows at the moment are 100% black. We will have to tweak this. For now, let's put this onto our scene, and I move up to the leaf box, put in an instance, add a merge and hook it in. And here we go. Now, doesn't look too good, so let's bring this further. Hey. So to change the shadows, we can simply go back to the replace material of the shadow project pass, and simply by reducing the opacity, you can make the shadows more transparent. Now the resolution of the shadows is not high enough, but we can blur it a little bit, and since we make it more transparent, it should be okay. Okay, this looks not too bad. I mean, the position for the shadows is a little bit off, so I will tweak that. And for that, I go back to the projection camera. And I hit Control to fine-tune the values until it looks right. Now I'm recording this, so it's a little laggy. Yeah, there. This little sharp shadow here gives the impression that the leaf is touching the ground pretty nicely. So again, copy the settings, and yeah, leaves are done. In the next episode, we will be doing some relighting action. And yeah, my name is Vito. I'll see you soon. Until then, enjoy what you're doing.